April 28, 1945, the outskirts of Berlin Tiergarten. The world has been reduced to the shriek of metal and the taste of brick dust. For Annelies Vogel, a 19-year-old Flakhelferin, the sky is no longer a canvas for clouds, but a ceiling of smoke, torn open by the red flashes of Soviet artillery. The symphony of the city's death is relentless. The deep, guttural cough of an 88mm anti-aircraft gun, her gun, is answered by the hysterical, shrieking crescendo of Katyusha rockets, what the men call Stalin's organ. Each volley walks closer, a titan's footsteps shaking the rubble-strewn earth, making the concrete tremble in her bones. Annelies lies flat in a crater beside the gun emplacement, her steel helmet digging into her brow. Beside her, Clara, barely 17, whimpers with each explosion. They haven't fired the gun in hours. There are no more shells. There is no more command structure. There is only the waiting. Hunger is a constant, a dull, grinding engine in the pit of her stomach. It's a familiar companion, one she has lived with for 2 years, but now it is different. It is a hollow, echoing void that no amount of watery soup or sawdust bread can fill. This morning's ration was the same as yesterday's, and the day before that, a lump of K-brot, Kriegsbrot, the war bread of a dying nation. You don't chew it so much as you break it down with sheer force of will. It's a gray, dense brick, heavy in the hand and heavier in the stomach. It's made of rye flour stretched with whatever the state can find, potato flour, pea flour, and in these last desperate days, a generous portion of sawdust and floor sweepings from the mills. It rasps against the throat as it goes down, and it sits in the gut like a stone, offering the illusion of fullness, but none of the sustenance. The hunger remains, gnawing from the inside. To wash it down, there was a ladle of soup from the field kitchen, a thin, greasy water made from boiling potato peels and the occasional withered turnip. There is no salt. There has been no real salt for months. The only flavor is the metallic tang of the pot and the faint, earthy bitterness of the peels. This is the diet of the Reich's defenders. This is the fuel for the final victory the Führer still promises from his bunker, his voice a disembodied ghost on the radio. "They say the Americans are starving too," Clara whispers, her voice thin and reedy, trying to find a sliver of hope in the doctrine they've been fed for years. Dr. Goebbels said their supply lines are broken. Their people are rioting for food in New York. Annelies says nothing. She used to believe it. They all did. They believed in the miracle weapons, in the fanatical will of the German people, in the fundamental weakness of their enemies. But belief is a luxury that requires calories. It's hard to hold on to a grand ideology when your vision swims from malnutrition and your thoughts are consumed by the phantom taste of a roasted chicken you ate 4 years ago. The propaganda posters showing a gaunt and skeletal Uncle Sam begging for scraps now seem like a cruel joke. A new sound cuts through the artillery, a low, mechanical growl accompanied by a rhythmic, metallic clatter. It's not the familiar rumble of a panzer. It's different, slower, heavier. The ground vibrates with a new intensity. A corporal, his face a mask of gray dust and exhaustion, peeks over the rim of the crater. His eyes are wide. "Americana," he chokes out, the words sounding alien, impossible. Before anyone can react, the beast appears. It grinds around a pile of collapsed masonry, a squat, olive-drab monster with a white star painted on its flank. An M4 Sherman. Its turret swivels, the long barrel of its 75mm gun scanning the street with an indifferent mechanical gaze. The air freezes. The constant background noise of the battle seems to fade into a dull roar, all focus drawn to this single terrifying machine. Figures emerge behind it, moving in a low crouch. They are not the monsters from the posters. They are tall, broad-shouldered men in strained, rounded helmets, carrying rifles Annelies doesn't recognize. They move with an unnerving confidence, a casual efficiency that speaks of a war they are not losing. A voice, amplified by a megaphone, crackles through the air. The words are foreign, a harsh, guttural bark of English, but the meaning is universal. It's the language of surrender. Hands go up, rifles are dropped. The corporal, a man who just yesterday spoke of fighting to the last bullet, slowly raises his arms, his face a hollow mask of defeat. Annelies pushes herself up, her knees weak. The hunger, the fear, the exhaustion, it all crashes on her at once. A soldier approaches, his face young, almost boyish, smudged with dirt. He motions with his M1 Garand. The gesture is clear. Out. Now. As she stumbles from the crater, her hands held high, her world shrinks to the muddy street, the indifferent steel of the tank, and the eyes of the enemy. The war for Berlin is over. A new, terrifying war for survival is just beginning. The journey from the shattered heart of Berlin is a slow, shuffling procession of ghosts. Annalise and Clara are herded with a few dozen other prisoners, a mix of teenage Flakhelferinnen, elderly Volkssturm men with hunting rifles, and a handful of exhausted, hollow-eyed Wehrmacht soldiers. They walk through streets that are no longer streets, but canyons of debris. The air, thick with the smell of death and decay, is a physical presence, clinging to their clothes and hair. The sounds of battle recede behind them, replaced by the crunch of their boots on shattered glass and the low, weary murmur of English from their guards. Every step is an exercise in managing fear. The propaganda has prepared them for this moment, painted it in the most horrific colors imaginable. They have seen the films, heard the radio broadcasts. The Americans, they were told, are barbarians, gangsters from Chicago and cowboys from the Wild West, devoid of honor. They will take what they want. They will execute prisoners for sport. Their allies, the Soviets, are even worse, subhuman beasts from the East. Surrender is not an option. It is a death sentence. Yet the reality unfolding around them is jarringly different. It is not brutal, but methodical. The American GIs who march beside them do not shout or shove. They move with a tired professionalism, their faces impassive. They look well-fed, impossibly so. Their uniforms are worn but intact, their boots sturdy. One of them, a sergeant with a square jaw and weary eyes, occasionally passes a canteen down the line for the prisoners to share. It's just water, but the gesture is so contrary to Annalise's expectations that it feels deeply unsettling. It's a crack in the foundation of her fear. They are loaded onto the back of a large, canvas-covered truck, a GMC CCKW. The engine roars to life and the vehicle lurches forward, jostling them together in the dark, swaying space. No one speaks. The German prisoners are a collection of individual terrors, each lost in their own nightmare scenario. Annalise finds Clara's hand in the gloom and holds it tight. The small point of human contact is the only anchor in a sea of uncertainty. She tries to pray, but the words feel hollow, childish. She finds herself thinking not of God, but of her mother. Is she alive? Is she hungry? The gnawing in Annalise's own stomach sharpens, a physical manifestation of her dread. After what feels like an eternity, the truck slows and stops. The canvas flap is thrown back, and harsh daylight floods the interior. Rouse, out, let's go. The command is sharp, but not cruel. They clamber down, their legs stiff, blinking in the unfamiliar brightness. They are in a large open field, miles from the smoke and ruin of the city. The air here is clean, smelling of damp earth and grass. In the distance, rows upon rows of drab green tents stretch towards the horizon under a gray, overcast sky. This is it, the prisoner of war camp. The processing is a blur of organized chaos. They are sorted into lines, men here, women there. A medic, surprisingly gentle, checks them for wounds, dabbing antiseptic on cuts and scrapes. They are told to empty their pockets. Annalise has nothing but a folded, grimy handkerchief. Her identity papers were lost somewhere in the rebel. She is no one, just a number waiting to be assigned. A weary American corporal with spectacles sits at a rickety wooden table, a stack of forms beside him. He asks for her name, her age, her unit. He speaks German, not fluently, but with a practical, deliberate cadence. His tone is not threatening, it is bored. Annalise feels a strange sense of deflation. She had prepared for a monster, an interrogator who would scream and threaten. Instead, she gets a bureaucrat. This quiet, impersonal efficiency is somehow more unnerving than the violence she had braced herself for. It speaks of an enormous, well-oiled machine, a system so vast and confident that she is merely a tiny, insignificant cog to be catalogued and filed away. She watches the American soldiers as they move about the camp. They laugh, they smoke cigarettes, they trade banter in their strange musical language. One of them is eating something from a small can with a spoon, scooping it into his mouth with an air of casual enjoyment. Food, real food. The sight makes her stomach clench with a pang so sharp it takes her breath away. She looks at her fellow prisoners. Their faces are uniformly pale, their eyes wide and sunken, tracking the movements of the guards with a mixture of fear and a deep, primal hunger. They are animals in a cage, watching the zookeepers eat. Finally, her line is motioned forward. They are marched towards a long, low building, a hastily constructed wooden mess hall. The smell wafting from it stops Annalise in her tracks. It's not the familiar sour scent of boiling turnips. It's something else entirely. Something warm, savory, and utterly foreign. Something that smells impossibly, achingly like real food. She exchanges a look with Clara, whose eyes are wide with a terrified, nascent hope. They are being led towards their first meal as prisoners of war. The great unknown lies just beyond the mess hall door, and for the first time in days, I am not sure if she is more afraid of death or of what she is about to discover. The inside of the mess hall is vast and noisy, a cavern of echoing clatter and the murmur of hundreds of voices. Long, rough-hewn wooden tables are arranged in neat rows, filled with other prisoners, women like them, faces etched with the same mixture of exhaustion and apprehension. The air is warm, thick with the smell of steamed clothing, damp wood, and that overpowering, alien aroma of cooked food. It hangs in the air, a substance so rich and complex it seems almost solid. For Annalise, who has breathed nothing but smoke, dust, and decay for weeks, it is a sensory assault. It makes her head swim. They are pushed into a queue that snakes along one wall. Ahead, a handful of American GIs stand behind a makeshift serving counter, their sleeves rolled up. They work with a practiced, almost bored rhythm, slapping items onto metal trays. They don't look at the faces of the prisoners. This is just a job, another task in a long day. The line shuffles forward, one agonizingly slow step at a time. The German women are silent, their eyes fixed on the servers. No one dares to speak, as if a single word might break whatever fragile spell is holding this moment together. Annalise's heart pounds against her ribs. What will they be given? She imagines a piece of the American's bread, which she's heard other prisoners whispering about, or perhaps a bowl of something hot. Anything would be a miracle. The hunger inside her is no longer a dull ache. It is a living thing, a predator clawing at the walls of her stomach. She feels lightheaded, dizzy with anticipation and fear. Is this a final cruel trick? Will they be given food only to have it taken away? Or worse, is it poisoned? The thought, a vestige of the relentless propaganda, flickers in her mind before she dismisses it. These Americans are too indifferent to orchestrate such elaborate cruelty. They seem to be operating on a logic entirely outside her experience. She watches the woman ahead of her in line, an older woman with graying hair pulled into a tight, severe bun. The woman reaches the counter. A young, freckle-faced soldier who looks no older than Clara scoops something from a steaming vat onto her tray, then adds another item from a box beside him. The woman stares down at her tray, her face frozen in an expression of pure, uncomprehending shock. She stands there for a moment too long, blocking the line, until another guard gently prods her forward. Then it is Clara's turn. The same sequence. Slop, item, tray forward. Clara takes her tray with trembling hands and looks at Annalise, her eyes wide as saucers, her mouth slightly agape. She doesn't move. Keep it moving, a guard says, his voice not unkind. Then it is Annalise's turn. She slides her metal tray along the counter. The young soldier doesn't meet her eyes. His movements are automatic. With a long-handled ladle, he scoops a portion of steaming water from a large simmering pot. Then, using a pair of tongs, he plucks something from the water, a plump, pinkish-gray sausage, and drops it onto her tray. Next, he reaches into a large cardboard box and pulls out a pristine white bread roll split down the middle. He places the sausage inside the bun. He shoves the tray towards her. That's it. Annalise stares down. Her mind, conditioned by years of deprivation and indoctrination, struggles to process what it is seeing. On the gray metal of her prisoner's tray sits an object of impossible luxury. The bread roll is not the dense, dark, sawdust-filled brick she has known as bread for a third of her life. It is white, impossibly, brilliantly white and soft. It looks like a pillow, a cloud. It is perfect. And nestled within it is the sausage. It is not the gristly horse meat and filler metwurst of home. This is a smooth, uniform, perfectly cylindrical piece of meat, steaming gently in the cool air of the hall. It is a hot dog. But Annalise does not know this name. She has never seen such a thing in her life. To her, it is a feast. It is a king's meal on a pauper's tray. It is an absurdity, a paradox that her starved brain cannot solve. Her entire body is screaming at her to eat, to devour this offering before it vanishes. But another part of her, a deeper, more bewildered part, is frozen. This cannot be real. This must be a dream, a hunger-induced hallucination. She stands motionless, the line backing up behind her, her knuckles white as she grips the edges of the metal tray. In front of her is not just a meal. It is a riddle. It is a challenge to everything she has ever been told, everything she thought she knew about the world, about her enemy, about the very nature of her own suffering. Annalise carries the tray as if it holds a holy relic. She follows Clara to an open spot at one of the long wooden benches. The simple act of walking feels monumental. each step a careful negotiation to avoid spilling this impossible bounty. She sits, placing the tray before her with a reverence she would normally reserve for a church altar. The metallic clink of the tray on the wood is the only sound in her immediate world. Around her, the low din of the mess hall continues, but for the women at her table, a profound and unnerving silence has fallen. No one eats. They simply stare. They are a congregation of the starving, presented with a miracle they cannot comprehend. The object on the tray is an emissary from another universe. Annalise leans closer, driven by a primal, irresistible curiosity. The aroma hits her first. It's not the thin, sour smell of Ersatz coffee or the earthy scent of boiled root vegetables. This is a rich, complex perfume. It smells of smoked meat, of warm bread, of spices she cannot name. It is the scent of fat, of protein, of pure, unadulterated sustenance. It is a smell she has only a distant, fading memory of, from a time before the war, a time of peace and plenty that feels like another lifetime. It smells, she thinks with a sudden, shocking clarity, like home, but not the home she just left, an older home, a forgotten one. Clara, sitting beside her, leans in as well, her nostrils flaring slightly. She whispers the words, so quiet they are barely a breath, a fragile realization given voice. Es riecht wie Frieden. It smells like peace. The words hang in the air between them, a devastating truth. Peace has a smell, and this is it. Annalise's fingers tremble as she reaches for the bread. She expects the familiar, coarse, gritty texture of the Kriegsbrot. Instead, her fingertips sink into the bun's surface. It is soft, spongy. It yields to the slightest pressure, then springs back, as if alive. It's a texture of pure luxury. For years, bread has been a weapon against hunger, a dense mass to be conquered. This is a caress. She lifts it. The weight is negligible. It feels like holding air. She brings it to her mouth, her movements slow, deliberate, as if in a dream. She takes a bite. The sensation is electrifying. The bread dissolves on her tongue. There is no grit, no sawdust, no struggle. It is a soft, slightly sweet cloud that melts away, a ghost of flavor and texture. It is the most decadent, most impossible thing she has ever tasted. The German prisoners would later call it Zauberbrot, magic bread. It seemed to have been conjured from nothing, an alchemical creation beyond their understanding. Then the sausage, the snap of the thin casing as her teeth break through, the sudden hot rush of savory, salty juice that floods her mouth. It is real meat, unquestionably, unequivocally real. The taste is overwhelming, a symphony of flavors, smoky, spiced, rich with fat, that her deprived palate has forgotten how to process. It is so intensely flavorful that it is almost painful. It is the taste of a world without rationing, a world without substitute, a world without lies. A low sound, a choked sob, comes from down the bench. Annalise looks up. The older woman, the one with the severe bun, is weeping. Not loudly, but with a deep, silent, shoulder-shaking grief. Tears stream down her weathered cheeks, dripping from her chin onto the tray below. She holds the hot dog in one hand, uneaten, as if the very sight of it is what has broken her. Annalise looks at Clara, whose face is a mask of stunned disbelief. A single tear traces a clean path through the grime on Clara's cheek. Annalise feels a strange heat behind her own eyes, a pressure building in her chest. She takes another bite, and another, the mechanical act of chewing, a desperate attempt to ground herself, to focus on the physical sensation and ignore the emotional cataclysm that is beginning to unfold within her. But it's no use. With every bite of the impossible bread, with every taste of the impossibly savory meat, a wall inside her crumbles. It is the wall of propaganda, of ideology, of national pride, of sheer, stubborn will that has kept her going through the shelling, the cold, and the gnawing hunger. This simple meal is not an act of kindness. It is an act of demolition. It is the most powerful weapon the Americans have yet deployed, a weapon that bypasses all defenses and strikes directly at the soul. A hot, salty drop splashes onto the back of her hand, which is still clutching the soft white bun. She looks down, surprised, as another follows it. The tears are coming now, unstoppable, a flood she cannot control. The food in her mouth suddenly tastes of ash and sorrow. The weeping spreads like a contagion. It begins with the older woman, then Clara, then Annalise, and soon, all up and down the long wooden table, the sound grows. It is not the sound of relief. It is not the grateful crying of the saved. It is a sound of profound and utter despair. A low, keening wave of grief washes over the mess hall, a collective unburdening of a weight too heavy to carry. The American guards watch from the perimeter, their expressions a mixture of pity and complete bafflement. To them, it is just dinner, a hot dog. They cannot possibly understand the psychic devastation they have just unleashed. For Annalise, each sob that racks her body is a piece of her world shattering. The tears are not for the hunger she has endured. They are for the terrible, soul-crushing weight of the lie. The hot dog in her hand is the proof. Dr. Goebbels had not been mistaken. He had not been misinformed. He had lied. The entire state, the entire war, was built on a mountain of such lies, and she was now standing on the summit, seeing the truth for the first time. The Americans were not starving. This thought repeats in her head, a frantic, hammering rhythm. They were not desperate. They were not on the verge of collapse. While her people were boiling weeds and tree bark, while children in Berlin were dying of malnutrition, the enemy, the decadent, racially impure, spiritually weak enemy, had this. And this was not a feast reserved for their generals. The casual, almost careless way it was served made that brutally clear. This was normal. This was everyday food. This was food for prisoners. They had so much of it they could afford to waste it on their captured enemies. The sheer, unimaginable scale of that abundance was a more profound declaration of victory than any flag raised over the Reichstag. Germany hadn't just been outfought, it had been outproduced, out-resourced, out-eaten to an extent she could never have conceived. The war was not a noble struggle of wills, a contest of ideological purity. It was a factory against a workshop, a granary against a bare pantry. They had never stood a chance. Her mind flies back to her family in Pomerania. Her mother, her younger brother, Hans. She pictures her mother's hands, thin and raw, tending their tiny victory garden, trying to coax a few withered vegetables from the depleted soil. She imagines her brother, his face gaunt, his body thin, his childhood stolen by a hunger that never ended. And while they slowly starved for the glory of the Reich, this food existed. In another part of the world, this soft white bread was being baked by the ton. These sausages were being processed by the million. The injustice of it is a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. She feels a hot surge of rage, but it has nowhere to go. Who is she angry at? The Americans for their bounty, or her own leaders for their monstrous deception? The hot dog has become a symbol of everything. It is the proof of her nation's failure. It is the embodiment of the enemy's strength. It is a testament to her own gullibility. It is a gravestone for every friend she lost, for every sacrifice made in the name of a lie. To die for a noble cause is a tragedy. To starve for a bankrupt one is a cosmic joke. A young GI, the same one who served her, approaches the table, his face etched with concern. "Hey, you okay? Ist gut?" he asks, fumbling with the German words. He points at the food. "Good?" Annalise cannot answer. She looks at him, at his well-fed face, his clean uniform, his eyes that hold no malice, only a simple, humane confusion. And in that moment she understands. He is not a monster. He is not a barbarian. He is just a boy from a country so rich, so powerful, that it could fight a war on two fronts and still feed its prisoners a meal that felt like a king's banquet. She looks down at the half-eaten hot dog in her hand. It is no longer food. It is evidence. It is the truth. And it is the most bitter thing she has ever tasted. The weeping continues, the sound of a generation of women, not broken by bombs or bullets, but by the simple, devastating scent of peace, and the realization that it had been kept from them for a price they were only now beginning to understand.